She thought he was just another broke nobody until the truth hit like a freight train. When a cocky waitress disrespects a humble-looking diner, she has no clue he secretly owns the place. The moment she realizes who he really is, absolute chaos. Keanu Reeves didn't get mad. He didn't raise his voice. But what he did next, let's just say, she instantly regretted it. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a lesson in respect that left an entire restaurant shook. Stick around till the end, because trust me, you won't believe how this night really ended. The night a waitress played herself. Lumière was the kind of place where the rich came to flex. Crystal chandeliers, soft jazz, waiters in crisp white shirts gliding between tables like ghosts. If you had to ask the price, you couldn't afford to be there. That was the unspoken rule. Ashley knew the type. She'd been serving these people long enough to tell who was loaded and who was just pretending. And the guy who just walked in? Definitely the latter. Scruffy jeans, plain black tee, boots that had seen better days. He moved with an easy confidence, but Ashley had seen this before, some lost tourist, thinking he could soak in the LA high life before reality smacked him with the check. She grabbed a menu and sauntered over, pasting on the kind of smile that wasn't meant to be kind at all. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice dripping with the same sugar-coated condescension she saved for diners who didn't belong. The man looked up, unbothered. "Just here for dinner." Ashley barely held back a smirk. "Right." She flipped the menu onto her arm, scanning the restaurant. Every good table was taken. Celebrities, execs, influencers clinking glasses of overpriced champagne. She spotted the worst seat in the house crammed behind a pillar, next to the kitchen door where the smell of garlic and sizzling oil hit like a freight train. "This one's perfect for you," she said, leading him over. "Nice and private." He glanced at the table, then at her, his expression unreadable. "Appreciated." Ashley cocked her head. No pushback? No awkward hesitation? Most guys in his position would at least glance at the menu first, start doing nervous math in their heads. But he just sat down, casually picking up the leather-bound menu like he had all the time in the world. She lingered, arms crossed. "Just a heads up, the prices might surprise you." The man met her gaze, cool and steady. Surprises are good. That threw her for a second. But whatever, his problem, not hers. She'd seen this game before. They'd order a drink, maybe a side dish, then claim they weren't that hungry once they saw the bill. It was almost sad. She turned on her heel, already making a mental bet with herself. 10 minutes, tops, before this guy bails. She laughed at his order, big mistake. Ashley was already moving on, her mind elsewhere. The guy in the corner? An afterthought. Probably scrolling through his phone, realizing he'd made a terrible mistake walking in here. Any second now, he'd be flagging her down with some lame excuse. "Actually, I'm meeting someone," or, "You know what? Just water for now." She had bigger fish to fry. Table 7 had a producer from some HBO show, and Table 3? A model with 2 million followers who tipped in Instagram tags. That's where her energy needed to be. Still, she circled back. Just for the entertainment. "Decided yet?" she asked, till. The man barely glanced up. "Yeah, the Wagyu Tomahawk." Ashley blinked, then blinked again. You sure?" she asked, a slow smirk creeping onto her face. The tomahawk wasn't just a steak. It was the steak. 40 ounces of Japanese imported, marble-cut, melt-in-your-mouth luxury. And at $650 a pop, it was also the fastest way to separate real players from wannabes. "Yeah," he said simply, closing the menu. "That'll do." Ashley let out a sharp laugh before she could stop herself. "Oh, okay," she said, dragging out the words. "Good choice. You know that comes with a pretty decent price tag, right?" The man just nodded. No hesitation. No awkward shifting. No, "Oh wait, maybe just a burger instead." Ashley felt her grin widen. "Oh, this is gonna be good." "All right," she said, spinning on her heel. "One Wagyu Tomahawk, coming right up." Except, it wasn't. She wasn't stupid. She knew how this played out. The second she put in that order, he'd start sweating, checking his wallet, looking for an escape hatch. So she stalled. She hit the bar first, chatting up the bartender about a reservation for next week. Then she swung by Table 7, laughing a little too loud at some joke about movie budgets. Then Table 3, making sure Miss Instagram knew her cocktail was on the house, compliments of Lumière. 10 minutes. 15. 20. She finally strolled back, faking surprise. "Oh wow, you're still here?" The man looked up, utterly unfazed. "Food takes time," he said, leaning back. "I'm good." Ashley's smile twitched. What the hell? She thought no one was watching. She was wrong. Ashley was getting annoyed now. This was supposed to be easy. The guy should have been squirming by now, checking his bank app under the table, fake texting an emergency so he could slip out unnoticed. Instead, he just sat there, cool as a damn cucumber, acting like this wasn't the most expensive meal of his life. And people were starting to notice. It started as murmurs, small whispers drifting from one table to another. At first, Ashley ignored it, assuming they were talking about some A-lister across the room. But then she caught the glances, the raised eyebrows, and worst of all, the way an older gentleman at the next table was watching her. He wasn't just watching. He was studying. Ashley plastered on a fake smile, flipping her notepad open. Something else I can get you? The man next to him leaned forward instead. Silver hair, sharp suit, the kind of guy who had real money, the kind that didn't need to screen. His voice was low but firm. "Excuse me, miss," he said. "I couldn't help but notice how long that order is taking." Ashley's fingers tightened around her notepad. She smiled. "Oh, we just like to prioritize our real guests." The second it left her mouth, she knew she'd messed up. The older man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Like he was filing that sentence away for later. "What makes someone real?" he asked. Ashley's stomach did a weird little flip. But before she could answer, the guy she'd been ignoring, the one in the black tee and worn-out boots, just smiled. And waited. Like he already knew how this was going to end. One name changed everything. Ashley was about 2 seconds from telling the old man to mind his business when she heard it. A sharp inhale. A muffled gasp. Then the unmistakable sound of a fork clattering onto a plate. Something had shifted. The energy in the room changed, like a storm rolling in. People were looking. Not just at her, but at him. The guy in the black tee. The one she'd spent the last half hour brushing off like an annoying fly. At first, she didn't get it. What was happening? Then she saw Mark, the restaurant manager, practically sprint from the back. His face had gone pale, like he'd just seen a ghost. "Mr. Reeves," Mark said, breathless. I had no idea you were here." Ashley's stomach dropped. "Wait. No freaking way. Reeves? As in Keanu Reeves?" Her brain short-circuited. Mark was already shaking the guy's hand, apologizing a mile a minute. "If we'd known, sir, we would have." Freaking Keanu, just smiled. Cool. Casual. Like none of this fazed him. "Didn't think I needed an announcement," he said. Ashley's heart was hammering against her ribs. He'd flooded her face. Oh, God. She had mocked him, treated him like some broke tourist. And he'd just let her. Mark finally turned to her, and his expression sent a chill straight down her spine. "Would you like to explain yourself, Ashley?" Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. She tried to talk her way out. Big mistake. Ashley's throat was dry. Her mind raced, grasping for a way to spin this, to make it seem like a misunderstanding. But there was no way out. Not this time. Mark was still staring at her, arms crossed, jaw tight. Half the restaurant was watching too, their eyes flicking between her and Keanu Reeves like they were waiting for the knockout punch. She forced a laugh, light, airy, fake. I didn't know. Okay. If I had to." Keanu raised a brow. "If you had?" His voice was calm. Too calm. Ashley felt the weight of the question sink into her chest. She knew exactly what he was asking. "Would you have treated me differently if you knew who I was?" Silence stretched between them. She wanted to lie. Wanted to say something, anything, that would make this all go away. But she couldn't. Because the answer was obvious. Yeah, she would have. She had treated him like a nobody because, in her mind, that's exactly what he was. And now? Now she looked like the fool. Mark exhaled sharply through his nose, rubbing his temple like he was debating whether she was even worth yelling at. "You have 1 minute to apologize," he said, voice clipped. Ashley swallowed hard and turned back to Keanu, her palms sweaty. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Reeves. I didn't mean to." Keanu held up a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. His expression was unreadable. "It's not about me," he said simply. "It's about how you see people." Ashley felt that in her gut. Because for the first time all night, she realized this wasn't about the steak. When Keanu speaks, you listen. The restaurant had emptied out. The last of the high-profile guests were gone, their luxury cars slipping into the night. The only people left were the staff, waiters, bartenders, cooks, standing in a loose circle around Keanu Reeves like students waiting for a lesson they hadn't signed up for. Ashley stood at the back, arms crossed, feeling small for the first time in a long time. She wasn't used to that feeling. Keanu leaned against a table, his expression calm but unreadable. He wasn't mad. He wasn't smug. He was just looking, taking everyone in. Then he spoke. "I've been rich," he said, his voice steady. "I've been broke. I've been famous. I've been invisible." Ashley swallowed hard. "I've walked into places like this when I had money to burn. I've walked into places like this when I couldn't afford a cup of coffee." He let the words hang for a second. "And I can tell you one thing. People treat you very differently depending on what they think you are." Ashley's stomach twisted. "But here's the thing," Keanu continued. "The best people? The real ones? They don't need to know who you are to treat you with respect." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Ashley had spent the night judging him, making assumptions, writing him off before he'd even said 2 words to her. And now, standing there, she realized just how wrong she'd been. Keanu exhaled, shaking his head slightly. "You never know who's sitting at your table. Could be a billionaire. Could be a guy spending his last $20 just to feel like he belongs. Either way, it shouldn't change the way you treat them." Ashley's throat felt tight. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't even lecturing. He was just telling the truth. And somehow, that was worse. "If you judge people by their shoes," he finished, "you'll miss the souls." Dead silence. Ashley felt something sting behind her eyes, but she blinked hard, shoving it down. For the first time that night, she had nothing to say. Some lessons come too late. The next night, Lumière felt different. Ashley had worked here long enough to know the rhythm, the VIPs, the Instagram influencers, the overtipped bartenders, the underappreciated cooks. Nothing should have changed. But it had. And the problem? It wasn't the restaurant. It was her. She felt it the second she walked in. The side glances from her coworkers. The knowing looks from the other waiters. Nobody said anything, but they didn't have to. She'd made a name for herself last night, and not in the way she wanted. The worst part? Keanu wasn't even mad. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't called for her to be fired. He'd just spoken, laid it out like a fact. And that made it hit 10 times harder. Ashley let out a slow breath and squared her shoulders. Time to fix this. She started small. A couple at table 5, tourists, clearly uncomfortable in a place this fancy. Normally, she might have rushed them along, pushed them toward the cheapest cocktails, assumed they wouldn't tip. Tonight, she smiled, gave them her actual best service, treated them like they belonged. Because maybe they did. A group of guys in their early 20s walked in, looking way out of their league. One wore a hoodie with a hole in the sleeve. Last night, she would have rolled her eyes. Tonight, she grabbed menus, led them to a decent table, not the good ones, but definitely not behind the pillar. It wasn't about overcompensating. It wasn't about trying to undo what happened. It was about one simple fact. She got called out. And for once, she was listening. Toward the end of the night, the older gentleman from the night before, the one who had called her out first, came back. Ashley straightened. He studied her for a second, then gave her a knowing smile. "You look like you learned something." Ashley exhaled. "Yeah, I did." The man nodded, slipping his hands into his pockets. Then it was a good night after all. And just like that, he walked away. Ashley let out a slow breath. She didn't need a second lesson. A single moment can rewrite a person's story. Keanu stepped out of Lumière and into the crisp LA night. The air was thick with city sounds, honking, distant laughter, the hum of expensive cars rolling down the boulevard. He adjusted his jacket, hands slipping into his pockets as he walked. No entourage, no cameras, just a man moving through the night like any other. Except, of course, he wasn't just any man. A kid, maybe 20, maybe younger, hovered near the curb, fidgeting like he was debating whether to say something. His hoodie was too big, his sneakers scuffed. When Keanu caught his eye, the kid hesitated, then blurted, "Mr. Reeves." Keanu stopped, smiled. "Yeah." The kid swallowed. I just wanted to say, you're, like, the nicest famous person ever." He let out a nervous chuckle. "Not that I've met a lot, but, yeah." Keanu grinned. "Just trying to be a decent human, man. That's all." The kid's face lit up like Christmas morning. Can I get a picture?" Keanu nodded. "Of course." The kid fumbled with his phone, hands shaking. Keanu waited patiently like he had all the time in the world. Click. The kid grinned at his screen, then back at Keanu. "Thanks, man. For real." Keanu gave him a nod. "Take care of yourself." As he walked off into the night, he could still hear the kid murmuring to himself, "Dude, that was Keanu Reeves," like he couldn't believe it had just happened. Inside Lumière, Ashley watched through the window. She didn't know what Keanu had said to the kid, but she didn't need to. She could guess. And for the first time, she got it. Greatness didn't need a spotlight. It didn't need a suit or a Rolex or a corner booth in a high-end restaurant. It didn't need to announce itself. Real greatness walked in wearing old boots, took the worst seat in the house, and still treated everyone like they mattered. Ashley exhaled, pressing her lips together. She had spent years looking at people and seeing only what she thought they were worth. Last night, that had changed. And tonight? She was walking out of Lumière a different person than the one who had walked in. She judged a man by his boots and instantly regretted it. Ashley thought she had it all figured out. She thought she knew who mattered and who didn't. But in one night, one moment, one name, her entire perspective got flipped upside down. Keanu Reeves didn't need a fancy suit to prove his worth. He didn't need a VIP table or special treatment. He just walked in, sat down, and let the truth reveal itself. And the truth? Respect isn't about status. It's about character. Ashley learned that lesson the hard way. And maybe, just maybe, you did too. If you love stories that keep you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Because trust me, you won't want to.